It's Thursday here at Muscle Serpents Daily, and guys, I'm sitting in my studio today because I want to give you guys a little science lesson before we go down and check out some snakes. I want to talk about the genetics of boa constrictors. I want to talk to you about the albino boa constrictor and some of the nuances that exist in that genetic morph. Now, when we talk about albinos, we have two types of albinos in any sort of snake breeding or reptile breeding for that matter. We have T positive albinos and T negative. The T stands for tyrosinase. Tyrosinase is the enzyme that helps create melanin. And when you're missing that enzyme completely and you cannot produce any melanin in the organism, you're said to be tyrosinase negative. That's your typical albino that we refer to as an albino. T negative albino has no black pigment whatsoever, usually a yellow and a white animal, and we see these throughout the animal kingdom for that matter. Those are the albinos with the red eyes. Okay, the T positive albino means that it's tyrosinase positive, but it's still an albino, meaning it's missing some of the production of melanin. How much depends on the different line of T positive we're talking about. That's why all these T positive lines look different. The Honduran T positive, or which is a Central American boa T positive, is much, much richer in color than, say, the Colombian T positive. But we're going to talk about Colombian T positive line, and the line we're going to talk about is the Boa woman caramel T positive. It was founded by the Boa woman by the Boa woman, and she named it after herself. BWC we call it, T positive. It's not compatible with the VPI T positive in boas, which a lot of people are very familiar with. It's a separate line from that, and they don't have compatibility. But what's interesting is that in the boa world, we have two forms of T negative albino, and they're not compatible with each other as well, which is unusual because usually the T negative albinos are usually compatible. The two lines are the Kahl albino, which Peter Kahl was the first one to work with that and reproduce it, and then there's the Sharp line, which Brian Sharp is the first person to prove out that one. They're not compatible with each other. You breed them together, you get double heads. You don't produce visual albinos. Let's put aside the Kahl albino line. Let's talk about the Sharp line. At some point in time, I don't remember what year it was, my friend Mike Weitzman over at Basically Boas had bred a Sharp albino and a Boa woman caramel together, and voila! He should have had double hets, but he didn't have double hets. He produced something of an in-between type of snake, and he called that the paradigm. And what's going on with that, and I'm going to use this little coat rack as a little visual display. If this is a strip of our DNA, and each side of this little hook, okay, are the two slots where each gene is found in two copies, okay? So each gene is found in two copies. This would be your allele, what we call an allele, which is just a segment of DNA. And the genes sit on this allele. And, if we have a T negative albino, we have two copies of the albino, one here and one here. Okay, one comes from your mama, one comes from your daddy. And if there's a genetic defect in both of those, and they both have the albino gene, we have an albino. Now, in an incomplete dominant situation, let's say take the hypo gene in boas, for instance, okay? You only need one copy. So one copy might be normal and one copy might sit here and be hypo. If you had two copies of the hypo gene, you would be a super hypo, right? Well, with Sharp albino, if you have one copy that sits here, and on this side you have a copy of the Boa woman caramel, okay, they sit on the same position here. And because they sit in the same position, they interact with each other and they create a visual, you can see it, okay, in between albino. We call it a paradigm. It looks like a creamy looking albino or a light looking, T positive, however you want to view it. Normally, okay, if you were to breed, like say the Kahl albino line, okay, which would have at least one spot here would be, albino, and you bred that with the Boa woman caramel, the Boa woman caramel sits down here. So if you had one copy of Boa woman caramel and one copy of Kahl albino, they're not on the same allele, so therefore you get no visual animal. You just get what we call a double head. Head for this and head for this. But for some reason, the Boa Woman Caramel and the sharp albino sit on the same allele. So when you put one copy of each, even though it's a recessive trait and it shouldn't express itself, it does because they're compatible with each other. Hopefully you get the gist of what I'm talking about. Not all, let's take for instance the Boa Woman Caramel, let's say that sits here, one copy, and you breed it with the VPI T positive. But that sits down here. So you have one copy here and one copy here. That's a double head. But you're not going to get a visual animal because they're not sitting at the same position. Okay, and that's important. If you guys know ball python breeding, there are certain traits like yellow belly and asphalt. They're two different genes, but they sit at the same position, and when they're in the same position, they create what we call act-like super form of the animal, and we get a visual outcome. So, having said that, the paradigm is the visual, I guess you could say, culmination of the sharp albino Boa Woman Caramel. And I'm going to take you into the snake room now, and I'm going to show you the nuances between a T-negative albino, okay, and a paradigm, and what the advantages of one over the other are. They both are beautiful in their own right. I personally think that the paradigm combination has a lot more applicability and a lot more, I guess you could say, future potential. Because once you take all the melanin out of something, you're done. There's not a lot you can do with it. You can put some, you can put blood into albino and produce an albino blood and stuff like that. But after a while, there's nothing, there's no more contrast you can create. With T positive, or what we call paradigms, which are kind of an in-between albino and T positive, which is even lighter than a T positive, you have contrast because there's still some pigment there. And let's take a look at the paradigms. I'm going to show you some paradigm bloods, and I'm going to show you a regular albino blood, and I'll show you the nuances and the differences and where I think the future of boa breeding with the paradigm, T positive, and albino might be heading in the future. This is a paradigm that's het blood. Now, we can dismiss the het blood really because the blood really in the het form doesn't really have any color variations. There's a little bit of a pattern and saddle distribution change, but for all intent and purposes, this is a paradigm. It is, once again, that sharp albino sharing the same allele with the Boa Woman Caramel, and you get this creamy looking albino-ish looking snake. It's definitely much lighter than a T positive in its pure form, or Boa Woman Caramel would be, but it's darker, certainly has way more browns in it than a typical albino would have, which has no melanin. And I'm going to show you the difference in a minute. Once again, look at the eye. Really, really cool looking eye. It's not that red albino eye, but it's certainly not a dark eye by any means. It's almost similar in color to the rest of its body. It's got that beigeish look to it. And this is, once again, this is like a month-old baby. Here's a 2-year-old male paradigm that's 66% het blood. I'm pretty sure it is because you can see the little bit of pattern and saddle anomalies there. But once again, they really hold their color really, really well, these paradigms. They get a tiny bit darker, but once again, just really nice, creamy looking color. I'm trying to get that eye in there. He's following me everywhere I'm going. He wants to eat probably. But once again, that nice light eye and just a beautiful snake. And this, so, a lot of people always ask me, well, what does it look like as an adult? Well, here is an adult. So this is a paradigm. Now, once again, the paradigms that I have the babies now are 100% het blood. I do have this one male available still. He's a holdback from 17. He's available for purchase. He's on Morph Market, and you can contact me directly if you want him. He's ready to breed. He's breeder ready. He will breed this season. So if you're looking to get a paradigm that's more than likely 100% het blood, he can plug right into your breeding program. Here is a sunglow, which is an albino and the hypo gene combined. It's also 100% het for leopard. She's not cooperating. There she is. And you can see, I mean, that's a huge, huge difference in a paradigm. You know, once again, the leopard will put a little, the het leopard will put a little bit more color in there, but still, that's a typical, you know, sunglow albino. Red eyes, a lot of white, bright orange saddles, no dark pigment whatsoever in there. And it's amazing when you put that Boa Woman caramel in place of one of the copies of the albino, you get that paradigm. And it's really, you know, to me, it's one of the most interesting combinations in all boa breeding, and that's why I'm doing a lot with the paradigm in my blood program. I put the paradigm into the scoria program now. We have on the ground female scorias that are double het paradigm blood. So I really like the paradigm look to it. Albino's great, don't get me wrong, I love albino, but there's so much more because you have more color in a paradigm. You have some dark pigments, and that I think adds more contrast and can sometimes be a little bit cooler. And when these albinos get older, some of them, you know, they fade out, they yellow out a little bit. The paradigms seem to hold their color a little better into adulthood. All right, now I want to show you what happens when you combine paradigm and albino with blood. And that's where the holy grail of the boa world is at right now. This is a fire opal. This is albino and blood combined. Obviously gorgeous, gorgeous snake. I mean, so red. You get the red eyes in the albino. There's no dark pigment whatsoever, no melanin, and just super, super red. It basically takes the blood boa morph and it removes any blackness, any darkness from it, and it makes, you know, a red and white snake essentially. And when these get older, they're going to be a little white and yellowish because that's what happens to all the whites and boas until we can isolate the axanthic gene. We're going to have yellows in adulthood. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous snake. But now we look at the paradigm blood, which is the paradigm with the blood gene. And we just see reds, and we obviously there's some browns in here, but it's a rich, rusty, reddish brown color that is exquisite. Let me see if I can pull him out. I just ate yesterday, so I don't want to disrupt them too much here. I mean, gorgeous snake, also just like the blood albino is. But what I want to really show you is not this baby, because all babies are gorgeous, right? Let's take a look and see what the paradigm blood looks like when he gets older. This is the paradigm blood. This is my paradigm blood male from 2017 that was the daddy of a lot of litters this year, or 2 litters, I should say. And look at him. No yellows, because once again, he's not albino, he's paradigm, and he's got the blood gene. He's still reddish. He's got lighter as he got older. And I actually love the way he looks. I love how these paradigm bloods look when they get older. They're just so cool looking. And they seem to get lighter as they get older. The more he sheds, this guy's been getting lighter and lighter. I'll show you the female, his sister. She's even lighter than he is. Here's his sister. Look how light she is. I mean, I've shown you her in previous videos. She is like amazing. This is paradigm blood. This is what that paradigm combination does. I think it's a better albino, I really do. And it's lighter than a T positive, and I like T positives, but you know, sometimes T positives are a little too brown sometimes for their own good. When you combine them with blood though, they look great, but this paradigm blood combination is awesome. So we end today's video taking a look at our scoria boa. This is the mama to the litter we had earlier this year where we produced those scorias that were double het paradigm blood. Imagine that paradigm blood in this purple snake that's already like this by nature. I mean, this is going to be just exquisite. I mean, how much better can it get than this, right? Paradigm blood scorias? I don't think the albino blood scoria would be as good, to be honest with you. I think it would remove too much contrast, and I really believe that contrast is really important when you want to see dynamic colors come out, like these purples and you want to see outlines. Albino is great, and we all love albinos, but to me, sometimes it's a roadblock to progress if you want to combine multiple genes because it erases everything. I'd rather just keep diluting stuff down than erase it completely. You know, but that's the artist in me, as my dad would say. Hopefully you guys are having a great week, and we will be back tomorrow, Friday, and we will look at what's hatching, because I got something hatching in the incubator, so we're going to take a look at that and go over a couple other things. Hopefully you found this little genetics explanation and in-depth look into the paradigm combination interesting. And if you like more stuff like this, put it in the comments below. I love doing this kind of science stuff. I love doing the genetics, and I like explaining, you know, things that might seem complicated to people so that they can understand these things in simplistic terms, because it's not very hard. I think people just sometimes don't explain them well. And, you know, when I was coming up in this snake world, I didn't understand a lot of stuff because no one was explaining it well either. So I'm trying to take a step back sometimes and really give you guys a nice explanation of the science of what's going on.